start with the Tories' increasingly desperate attempts to tackle the migrant crisis. The day started badly for the government as it emerged that opting out of the European human rights laws could cause even more delays to the plans to send migrants back to Rwanda. And now, firebrand Lee Anderson has broken ranks by calling for a cap on migration to be brought in. Anderson was speaking less than a week after it was confirmed that net migration last year was a whopping 745,000.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The people in Ashfield have had enough of this. 7,000 people on the council house waiting list. People struggling to get a GP appointment. People struggling to get a dental appointment. Struggling to get school places. Isn't it about time, Minister, that we had a cap on migration and put some clear divide between us and that lot over there?
Minister.
Well, my honourable friend who represents a constituency near to mine speaks for my constituents as he does for his in saying that the British public want us to get on with the job now and bring down the numbers coming into this country. The Prime Minister, the Home Secretary and I are committed to bringing forward a set of fundamental reforms which I hope will achieve the objective that he's set out. There are definitely strong arguments for using caps, whether in general or on specific visas, but these are conversations that we need to conclude within government.
Well, I'm joined now by GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope. Chris, always a pleasure. Last night, Jacob Rees-Mogg saying the issue of immigration could cost the Tories the next general election, you don't say. And then Lee Anderson just roaring in the Commons, people in Ashfield have had enough of this, no doubt, echoing the sentiment of millions of people out there. It's only Tuesday, Chopper, and by my reckoning, this is about the 6th immigration nightmare the Conservatives have had this week already.
I think Lee Anderson is really eloquently setting out the pressure that's allowing well over 700,000 people net through the front door in the calendar year last year, putting on local services. He said there's 7,000 people waiting for a council house, people struggling to get a GP appointment in Ashfield, go to the dentist, and so it goes on. And that's the impact, I think, of allowing these figures to balloon so markedly. 1.2 million people arrived here legally in the 2 years to the end of June 2022. Forget all the small boats issue. That's a symptom of a wider malaise in immigration policy. And it sounds the first time in that clip there we heard from the House of Commons earlier that Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick gets it. He said there, didn't he, there are definitely strong arguments for using caps, whether in general or on specific visas. Now, we know what the caps is going back towards where the government was, the Tory government was, when they were first elected in 2010. They said, David Cameron said there, I think following at the time, Damien Green, who was the immigration minister, we should bring numbers down to tens of thousands a year net. Well, 742,000 is a country mile, a different planet from anything below 100,000. So caps might work, and that might mean that as you approach that cap, you may increase the salary threshold to get a visa from, say, £26,000 a year currently to maybe £40,000 a year, as advocated by Boris Johnson and former Home Secretary Suella Braverman. So we are now starting to see an indication of where the government's going. But Lee Anderson there is right in that he is articulating a real anger amongst the Tory right, amongst red wall seats that Lee Anderson and others represent. Get control of our borders. That's what many of them people voted for in 2016, and so far this government has failed to do so. It shows to me that there's some big measures coming.
But don't you think we've had so much talk of caps? I mean, David Cameron talked about them, every subsequent government did too. Even Ed Miliband was talking about caps. It feels like we've had more caps than Bobby Moore in all these conversations, yet nothing ever happens, nothing ever comes of it, Chris. And isn't that the point? You know, Lee Anderson's anger, I think it's palpable anger, you can taste the anger now, is what voters are feeling. And Cheryl Jacobs, one of your former columnists in The Telegraph today, saying that the Liberal elites have never been more out of touch with the British public over this topic of immigration. It makes Brexit look like a tea party. And isn't the point that in places like Ashfield, where Lee speaks to voters and he gets it, but in the shires, where they're not affected by this, they live in a never-never land about the issue?
Well, that's right. The Shires you described there are the ones who benefited from high immigration. It's brought down the cost of building, cost of finding a builder, that kind of thing has been made cheaper by large numbers of migrant builders coming here to work. And that's the problem. It's an issue which is felt away from Westminster, and that's why we talk about it a lot on GB News. And the main parties don't want to talk about it, because guess what? Labour's answer on this is not really as strong as the Tory answer. The Tory answer is to try and deal with the legal crossings over the southern border with this Rwanda plan. Again, that's up in the air, and that's talked about by the Prime Minister. Labour's got nothing. They want to talk about working more closely with Europol, doing more deals as best they can with countries on the continent, maybe even looking at quotas of migrants and moving some quotas of people into the UK from other countries to try and have a cross-Europe approach towards it. None of these are going to work, and I think it's really important that a party gets this. Lee Anderson, of course, is co-deputy chairman of the party. He is someone who talks with authority, and the fact he's asking such an aggressive question of the front bencher, Robert Jenrick, shows the fury on the back benches, even though Lee Anderson is got a kind of role within the party, and that's why I think we are going to. It's building up a head of steam behind it for some strong measures. But as you say, caps haven't worked in the past. They're hard to enforce because it's very hard to know where you draw the line. But I think at some point this government has got to, in its words, grasp the nettle. It's grasped the nettle on other key policies, notably not jailing criminals for less than a year. Let's see if they can do this on immigration.
Do you think it's too late to turn this around now? I mean, we've been having this conversation for so long, Chris, and to say that Robert Jenrick has finally woken up to it, I just find astonishing that it would come so late as we approach the end game of this political term to be staring at the reality of a city the size of Liverpool in student visas alone. Is it too late for them to turn it around, or is it simply going to engulf the party?
Well, nothing's ever too late. It depends when the election is in terms of too late, because if an early election might be they can't do anything on immigration before they go to the polls in May or June next year. If they go longer into October and November, they risk having some small boats crossings and how bad that will look for them if Rwanda can't happen. Yeah, I think that they have failed to do this. I mean, in a sense, it's all on the Tory government, both migrations, but the net legal migration is all about a choice the government's made to increase and to allow more numbers coming through. The battle they always have, of course, is with the Treasury, who want roughly 240,000 people to arrive here each year net to keep the economy growing and boost the economy, while so far allowing millions to sit on benefits, not working, and it's trying to get them back to work and control migration. It looks like the government's getting it, but to get results before the election is looking very tight indeed, Martin.
OK, Chris Hope, thank you for that update live from Westminster. We'll continue this conversation. I'm joined now by Conservative MP Alexander Stafford. Alexander, welcome to GB News. Always a pleasure. Lee Anderson just stood up in the chamber and roared. People in Ashfield have had enough of this, talking, of course, about the huge numbers of immigration. You're the MP for Rother Valley. Are they saying the same there to you?
They're saying that, if not even louder and clearer than they're saying in Ashford.
OK, so what do you intend to do about it?
Well, we need to make sure the government actually grasps the message and actually gets numbers down, both illegal and legal migration. It is completely unsustainable that having this huge amount of net migration. We need to get the Rwanda deal going. We need to look at any and all ways to clamp down on migration, legal and illegal. And, if that involves pulling out of the ECHR, let's look at that. If that involves doing something more drastic, let's look at that. Let's leave no stone unturned to make it clear to the electorate, to our people, that we want to clamp this down, because it cannot go on like this.
Is the ECHR a bit of a bogeyman? And the reason I say that is because Giorgia Meloni in Italy, well, Italy's a member of the ECHR, Italy's still a member of the European Union, yet they've done a deal with Albania in half the time that the Rwanda deal has failed to get a single person off the ground. Do you think people are just getting a bit bored of the fact that you're kind of always blaming the bogeyman in Strasbourg? In actual fact, the responsibility lies squarely on the Conservative Prime Minister's desk.
Well, I think there's a big difference between the UK's approach to international law and international treaties and many of our European counterparts who often ignore parts of it. But on Albania, as you mentioned, numbers are down 90% from Albania, but we need to go further and faster with the small boat crossings.
OK, when you look at the disarray, Jacob Rees-Mogg last night, we're having him on the show in about an hour's time. He said that this issue could cost the Conservatives the next general election. Christopher Hope a moment ago said Robert Jenrick is finally waking up. How's it taken so long for you to wake up, the immigration minister, the top brass of the party, when since every election from 2010 onwards, the Conservative voters have been demanding that immigration has taken back control? And yet here we are, 745,000, record numbers of students, of skilled workers, and people feeling that we've done anything but take back control.
Well, I voted for Brexit. I campaigned for Brexit for many reasons, including to take back control of our borders. It is right, we need to get hold of this. And that is why I said literally nothing should be stopping us clamping down on immigration. And I want the government, when they bring forward the new legislation, to be really, really strong and really, really robust. But clearly, the legislation that has been brought through the last couple of times hasn't passed the muster test, hasn't actually got there yet. We need to actually have better laws, better legislation to actually stop it, to stop the lawyers, to stop the Labour Party getting in the way. We're allowing it to happen. We should be drafting better legislation to get it past the law courts.
But it's been 13 years. Sorry to labour the point, pun not intended. The Conservatives have been in power for 13 years. The manifesto pledge in 2019 was to cap overall numbers below 239,000. Yet here we are this week. That's almost been tripled. You can't blame the Labour Party. You can't blame the European Court of Human Rights. You guys are in power and it's almost trebled under your watch.
Yeah, and I agree. And obviously we've had things like the Ukraine visa system, Afghanistan, Hong Kongers, which massively inflate the numbers, but that's still not good enough. We still need to bring it down. And I want a hard cap. I want a hard cap to try and bring those numbers down and actually tie it to tangible things like housing and other such aspects of the government, because we need to link the two things together. And it's clearly not sustainable. And it needs to be clear, the legislation needs to be clear that we need to stop it and stop people exploiting our system in the UK. And clearly they are exploiting it. And we need to have a tougher stance on this.
And Alexander, you said the people in the Rother Valley are shouting even louder than those in Ashfield. They've had enough of this. Jacob Rees-Mogg said this issue could cost you the next general election. Do you think it will cost you the next general election? Is it too late to turn this around?
I honestly think the next general election could be one of the main defining moments, will be who the public trust more when it comes to immigration, or rather who will actually get the job done. Will it be the Conservatives' plan, and I hope something like Rwanda, actually a harder line, or will it be Labour's, what they call the plan, which is actually taking people out of the numbers, so they'll take students out of the numbers to try and massage the figures. We're being honest, the Conservatives, saying it's far too high, it's including everyone. We know Labour are going to play jiggery-pokery with the numbers, but we want to give the real numbers and clamp down on them, and that is what I think the election will be fought on. And I do think we're going to have a stronger message, far stronger than anything Labour will do with their jiggery-pokery.
OK, Alexander Stafford MP for Rother Valley, thank you for joining us on GB News. Much, much appreciated. So what do you make of that? Do you believe what these people say? They say they want to clamp down. They say they want to crack on with it. But, I mean, is it just yet more rhetoric? Let us know. GB Views at gbnews.com.